and Substance Abuse Task Force third annual event, January event, I believe. We're so glad that you're here with us this evening. As you can see on the screen, our theme this evening is addiction. It affects us all. I'm Pastor Martha Harrison. I'm one of the pastors that works with this task force. And if we have any guests and visitors with us, we're so glad that you're here. If you'd like any information to being on the task force, you can talk to me or Pastor Mark about that. We'd love to have new people working with us. I'm so grateful, though, for our current task force that has put on this event. Tonight we're going to start with a personal story, and then we will have our panel discussion after that, and there will be time for questions. And then at the end of the evening, I heard that there might be some scotcheroos. Wow, that was a reaction there. Anyway, there might be some scotcheroos and coffee, but there is coffee if you want to grab a cup now too. That's fine as well. But I'd like to invite our first guest up. Her name is Beth, and she's going to come up and share with us.
Hello. My name is Beth. I'm a little nervous. So a little bit about myself. I'm 35 years old. I'm originally from Newtown. I'm enrolled with the 3 affiliated tribes down there. So a little bit about my backstory. I came from a home where my dad was an alcoholic, so my home life was a little chaotic. And I've seen addiction at an early age. That's kind of was introduced to me right away. I did good in school. I played sports, everything like that. I kind of fell into addiction. I started using kind of under pressure, and then I realized that for me, I started using it as a coping mechanism. I started, when my friends were just using it to have fun, I was using it to kind of numb myself from things that were going on at home. I was struggling with anxiety at the time, depression. So around maybe 16, I fell into using pills. And that was just kind of a thing for a while. It was just, I couldn't stop. When everybody else could stop, I kept using. I did manage to graduate. I went to my first treatment around the age of 18, and it didn't stick. I didn't really think at the time that I had a problem. I was young, and I kind of thought I knew everything. I've been in and out of long-term treatment, short-term treatments, in long-term jail, short-term jail, prison, you name it, I kind of did it. When the oil boom came around in around maybe 2013, I think the oil boom kind of hit Newtown, and that was when I started using heroin, and I became an IV drug user, and drugs weren't cheap, so I started selling at that time. I was federally indicted in 2014. I went to prison. That still wasn't, addiction was a crazy thing. Like, it still wasn't enough for me to quit. I wanted it to be, but it wasn't. I got out of prison, and I fell off pretty quickly, and I was on probation, so that kind of made it difficult to use, but I still didn't stop. I just kept using. In 2018, 2019, I went to Heartview. My brain is bad because of all the drugs. But I think it was like 2019 I went to Heartview. And I've been there since then. I got on the methadone program, which helps curb the cravings. And I thought that was the cure. Like, I thought that was going to fix it all. Once I got the methadone, I thought that was the answer to all my problems. I didn't realize that I needed to do work on myself, because there was a lot of things from my past that I didn't deal with. So I fell off a few times since being at Heartview, but when I finally decided to listen to what people were telling me and kind of surrender, I was able to stick. My last treatment I went to was 2020, and I've been sober since then. I work at Heartview now. I'm a recovery coach. Thank you. And I think the main thing that I've learned is that everybody's recovery looks different. Like, some people need to be on medication to help them. Some people fall, like more than once. They fall a lot. And that's okay as long as we keep getting back up. And another thing I learned is that addicts aren't bad people. They struggle, and we do bad things because of the drugs. But I don't think that addicts are a lost cause, or they're not worth the time it takes to help them. I think that everybody can find recovery. It's just whether or not, we're willing to put in the work. But I think it's just, the main thing I learned is that all our recoveries look different, and they don't all look the same, and that's okay. Some people, they get it right away, and some of us don't. And yeah, so that's all I got.
So if I could have our panel come up, and Beth, you're welcome to come up on our panel and sit. We've got 4 chairs set up. For the benefit of everyone here, kind of the purpose, what we're trying to accomplish with this is we have a number of people in our community that are, part of their job, part of what they do is they confront some of the issues that we see in Bismarck that arise from addiction. And so the purpose of this today is to provide a place where they're going to provide some of their background and their observations, the things that they would like our community to be aware of. But this is also a place for anyone to ask questions. We had in our prior meetings with this, we provided a place for people to ask a lot of questions. And so, I would really encourage you, if you have a question, there's no, there are no dumb questions or things like that. Our panel has graciously agreed to be here, and that's kind of the purpose, is to provide an education to everyone. So I'm going to start, I guess, with Judge Reich. And maybe what we'll do is just start with you kind of introducing yourself and explaining a little of your background and kind of your exposure to addiction issues in Bismarck.
Okay. I'm Judge Reich, David Reich. I'm a district court judge here in Bismarck, or South Central Judicial District. It's 9 counties, but most of our cases are here in Bismarck and Mandan. I've been a judge, most people say for too long probably, but for a long time, since 2006, so almost 19 years. And before I became a judge, I was an attorney in private practice for about 23 years. And when I was in private practice, we just did civil litigation, civil work. We defended people like in car accident cases, those types of cases. That's civil. If you're familiar with the court system, civil and criminal. So I didn't really do any criminal law work. When I became a judge, I realized about 75% of my docket was criminal law work, and so it was a little different. It was like being introduced to a whole new part of society in Bismarck, and I soon realized that most of my criminal cases and a lot of my civil cases, family law cases, accident cases, domestic violence, restraining orders, parenting rights cases, a lot of them had drugs or alcohol involved in some way or another. Most of you are aware of a lot of the criminal matters, and certainly the driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, possession and selling drugs. Those are typical criminal cases. So I was introduced to a whole new category of people. And Beth's story is pretty similar, that pretty representative, I guess, of people going through addiction and recovery. Not very often that there's a straight line to recovery. Most people when they come to court, they all say, well, I've learned my lesson, I'm not going to do this again. And I believe they believe that. Most of them don't, however, unfortunately, because that's kind of the nature of addiction. And so I started seeing people. I realized that I'm seeing people over and over again. They get arrested and they get sentenced, and we order them to get a chemical dependency evaluation and follow through with recommended treatment. We put them on probation, and it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. People come back again and again, and finally, in 2014, I'll lead into Mandy here, but I started a running program called RAD to try to help break the cycle of addiction and crime and jail. And so we run. We've been running since 2014. We ran 3 days a week. Now we run. Basically, we have two days that we run. Saturday morning is the biggest time, and Mandy can tell you about that. But what we've found, or what we hope to find, is that we give people something else to focus on, something to make them feel better, set goals. They get in shape. It helps them physically and mentally. They get a support group in a regular meeting place. And it doesn't work for everybody. Running's not for everybody, but I think running is an example. If people can find a passion of something to do, something that they're passionate about, and find a group of people that are supportive in their recovery. So many people, after we sentence them, they just go back into the same environment they were in when they got in trouble, and it's no big surprise that we see them back again. And so people really have to change their lives. They have to change who they hang out with. They have to change their habits. They have to set goals. And they need a lot of support. It really does take a village, I think, to keep people sober and in recovery. But the price that you pay, the worst case is we see people, either killing themselves or killing someone else in accidents, and that's hopefully if we can save one person's life by keeping them sober, we've accomplished something. And so that's kind of my life. I see addiction almost every day in my courtroom, and I see the devastation. It affects everybody. Nobody's immune. Doesn't matter what race, sex, gender, social, economic status you come from. You can become addicted. I'm probably talking too long here. When I started, one of the big problems with alcohol's always been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. When I started, it was the mom and pop meth labs that were the big thing. And legislation kind of took care of that. Well, then the drugs just came in from out of state, and they got cheaper, and people were, and then the opioid crisis hit, and people would get opioids, and then fentanyl came, and now people are dying from fentanyl. And so I'd like to think we're making progress, but it seems like every time we push something down and make progress, something else pops up over here. And so it's not a straight line to fixing this either, just like it's not a straight line in recovery. There's always going to be advances and regression, I think. And so, but we keep trying because, like I said, if we can get one person clean and sober and keep them that way, we've accomplished something. So anyway, I probably talked too long, but I talked a little bit about Mandy, and so maybe she wants to talk next.
Okay, sounds good. And our next panelist is Mandy Dendy. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. What brings me here to this panel, I suppose, is my love of running. I've run since I had my second daughter, maybe 2005-ish, 2006-ish. So a long time. It doesn't make me great at it, but I'm persistent. So I continue to do it, and really different from the judge. I don't see addiction and recovery in my daily life like he does. Although I know I see it. I feel the impacts because you find it at your workplace, you find it with your kids occasionally, you find it in your kids' friends groups, you find it in your social circles, and a lot of times it's invisible. Sometimes, it pops up and you see it, but I know a lot of times it's just really invisible. And so the judge set a really great example with how he put together RAD and how he runs it. And so my job is really easy. I co-coordinate the Runners Against Destructive Decisions program right now, and my job is just really to show up. I'm really good at organizing things, and so I keep those emails. We send out once a week emails reminding people of our 2 weekly run opportunities, and then I show up every Saturday, every single Saturday that I'm able to show up. I'm there at 8 a.m. at the Y during the cool months, where we can work out in the Y, or we go work out outside. Running is a component of it, but the Y graciously allows us to work out inside too, using the track or the machines. And then in the summer, we meet at 7:30, a little earlier, to beat the heat, and we run down at Sertoma Park. And you don't have to run the whole time, but it is a place, and it's a constant place. There's always going to be somebody there. I've never shown up to RAD and been the only one there. So if you're looking for somewhere to go, even if it's just to take a walk with somebody or smile at somebody or say hi, I mean, it's a really, I really have an easy job in this. And the other really beautiful part of RAD that relates to addiction and recovery is I don't know who you are. You come and you're a runner, or you're just, you're a fellow community member that I'm gonna say hi to and, see if you're willing to get to know me or how we can interact. I really approach being a member of RAD as just an opportunity to interact with other people. I really look at it like running is what gets me there, because I like running, but people are really at the core of RAD, and getting to interact with people. You don't know what somebody's story is, and nobody knows what my story is, but we all have opportunities to share our stories and change our stories, and that's kind of what it is. So if you want to come to RAD, you want to meet somebody to run with, that's great. If you want to come to RAD and you just don't want to be alone, for that period of time, you can go take a walk with somebody, you can hang out, drink some coffee, find some friendly faces. We provide shoes. If shoes are a barrier, we have quite a decent stockpile right now of used and gently used and new running shoes. So we don't allow anything but the runner themselves to be the barrier. If you need a pair of running shoes, sometimes even if you need running clothes, if you can't afford to enter a race but you'd love to run one, we do sponsor race opportunities throughout the year. So really taking away a lot of the barriers that might come up, right? All you have to do is show up, assuming that you can get there, and just put in whatever you choose to put in on any given day, which is all any of us do. Some days you're a great runner, some days you're super motivated, some days it really stinks to get out of bed, and that's okay. That's the reality that you bring to it, and that's fine. So yeah, that's kind of some of my background. I mean, I have a background in law and all sorts of other stuff, but really trying to think about what brought me here tonight.
So how many people on average attend like a Saturday morning run?
Ooh, that really varies. If it's colder out, sometimes we notice less people, but it can range from, sometimes there's like a handful of us, maybe a half a dozen to a couple dozen, to even, more than that, maybe 3 dozen, 4 dozen. It just really varies from time to time.
And what's the range of ages of people that attend that?
It's a really good mix. There's younger folks, sometimes we get teenagers, even my daughter shows up occasionally and runs, all the way to, I'm thinking our oldest members must be in their 70s.
78, I think.
Okay, yeah, late 70s I'd say probably, so, and they run. Some of them are fast.
And just so I'm understanding you right, anyone can come,
Yep.
whether they've dealt with an addiction issue or whether they just want to support people that have, or if they just want to run.
Yep, and you don't have to say why you're coming. You just come. And whatever you're looking to put into it is what you put into it, and whatever you're looking to get out of it is what you'll get out of it. So Judge Reich always said when we ran the Santa run that we were dressed up as Santas, and we just all came as runners. You didn't know who was who and who was there. We were all just there to run together, and I really look at that as the weekly RAD experience too. Probably the hardest part will just be walking into a room full of people you might not know and finding the courage to just make eye contact with somebody and say hi or smile at them, and if you do that, you're great. You're great.
Well, thank you. Dr. Henke, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I did not get here because of my love of running. And I actually, I'm only here because I think God put me here. I grew up with a very rainbows and unicorn kind of life. My parents have been married 53 years. I've never heard anyone raise their voice in my house. And I grew up not believing that addiction really affects all of us. I guess I thought that was for like, poor people and, other people, not people like me. I went through, college, med school, even into residency, not really believing that this was an illness and that people with substance use disorders could be helped or should be helped. And I sort of fell into my job at Heartview. I ran into the executive director at Target one night, and he had married a friend of mine, and he asked me if I would interview, and I said no. I said, I don't really like that population. I don't want to do that. And he said, we just need an hour a week. Can you give us an hour a week? So I gave him an hour a week, and I wasn't there very long, and then they started talking to me about working with patients, and again, I said no. And they're like, just read, the science is pretty compelling, see what you can do. So, okay, and so December of 2010, I started working with patients at the Heartview Foundation, and within 2 years, I left my job at Sanford. Sorry, I get emotional. I'll never work with another population. I was wrong. And so it is now my passion to help other people see how wrong we often are when we look at someone who has a substance use disorder. As Beth said, they're absolutely worth the time. They're worth the energy. They're amazing, incredible, compassionate, hardworking, committed people that a lot of times didn't have the opportunities I had with my rainbows and unicorns, And so now, like I said, I left my job at Sanford. This is all that I want to do. I work with physicians, med students, residents, PAs who struggle with substance use disorders and mental health, and I also work with homeless people who use IV drugs, and their illness is the same. They have different backgrounds, they have access to different things, but the illness remains the same, and they just need tools, and everyone's tools are different. Beth might have a set of tools, but someone else has a completely different set of tools because her tools don't work for them. And so until we can get to a place where we're all willing to have the conversation and we're willing to say, okay, as a community, what kind of tools can we offer? Can we offer space? Can we offer support? Can we offer, food, housing, all of those things? Because a lot of people don't have access to that, and we think that they should just get a job and get an apartment. But how do you get an apartment when you're a felon? How do you get a job when you're a felon? How do you overcome those obstacles that we've built into our society? We have to do better, and we have to use our voices and get people to listen and understand, as our pastors always say, we're all beloved children of God. And there's none of us that aren't worth it, that don't deserve a better life. And so now this is, again, like I said, I could not have been more wrong, and I'm so glad that God put me in a place where I was at Target one night, and this is not a commercial for Target, but that's where I was when I was given this opportunity, and it has been one light bulb moment after another, and so that's how I ended up here.
Thank you. Now, Beth, you were brave enough to give you a little bit of background, but I'm going to put you on the spot as I work back down the line. So the question I have for you is, we've got a bunch of middle school and high school kids. We have members of our congregation. What's something that you wish that people knew about addiction? What's something that would be important, is something that if you felt like people understood that, it would make things better?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think probably that anybody can fall into addiction. It's not just poor people. It's not just the bad kids in school. It's everybody, anybody. It's the kids that do good on the basketball team. It's the kids that do really good in school. it's the grandma down the street, the mom that has kids. Anybody can fall into addiction, and I think that it's just important that and we all deserve the same amount of help. Like, the bad kids deserve the same amount of help as the kids that are doing good in school, the same amount of help as the mom who lost her kids, and the same one that has her kids. You know what, you get kind of, is that making sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. What's something that, from your perspective, having kind of, gone through the system of lots of different systems, what's something that you think would help? Something that, a society or a church could do to help people deal with addiction?
I think share God. I think that for me, I went to Teen Challenge, which is a faith-based program, and they teach higher power in AA and things like that. And I think that when somebody finally told me about Jesus, then it was a different kind of feeling. It was a feeling that that I was worth more than just using. I can't explain the feeling, but I think that it's important that I don't know. I feel like they say that we need a higher power. You know what I mean? And I think that in church, that's what we teach. And I think that we have to remember that everybody deserves that. It doesn't matter if they're using, if they're not. We have to hate the sin, not the sinner. And so I think it's just important that we just share compassion and grace and love. I think that's really it.
Thank you. And so I'm going to jump then back to Dr. Henke. Sure. So you have a different perspective. You have both, the educational background as well as the clinical experience. What are 3 things that you wish that a congregation or a group of high school and middle school kids, that they understood about addiction?
I've talked to probably thousands of people in recovery, and I've never met one that said this is where they wanted to be. Like, they didn't want to be substance users. They didn't want to struggle with addiction. It blindsides people. And so I think we have to be aware of that. There's no substance that is okay for a developing brain. So if you're 13 and you're vaping, that's not okay. Our brains develop until we're 26 years old. If we expose them to substances while our brains are developed, we will alter our trajectory. And so I think that nobody sets out to have this illness, I think, is paramount, and nobody gets better for being judged. So withhold your judgment and just give compassion. At the end of the day, we all make mistakes every single day. Like, today wasn't perfect, tomorrow won't be either, right? So every day that I wake up, I'm gonna make a mistake. Now, I might not put a needle in my arm, but I'm gonna do something wrong. And so I'm in no position to judge somebody for the mistakes that they're making. And I think that if we would just hand out compassion, how we hand out judgment, people would be a lot better for it. If people knew they had a safe place to land and that they had a community that cared about them, that was willing to help them find shelter and food and a meeting and care for their kids and all of those things, if people felt like they were loved instead of judged, I think that the trickle-down effect would be unbelievable. And people would actually want to get help instead of being afraid to raise their hand and say, I'm an addict, because they don't want the judgment, right? But if they knew that when they did that, you'd say, come on in, because to us, you're more than that. You're so much more than your illness. I'm a breast cancer survivor, but that doesn't mean that's all that I am. Right? I'm a million other things that aren't that. Just like Beth is a million other things other than a person with a substance use disorder. And if we can get to that place where we just see people as people, then we're going to save some lives.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Dendy, you are running a program right now, essentially a person trying to help other people. What's something that you would say to maybe people who are watching this from the outside and feel like, I think everyone has some substance abuse issues in their family or friend group. What's something you would tell people about getting involved or trying to volunteer or help with people that are dealing with addiction?
How I think of it, and one thing I didn't mention before, we also do a running program out at the Missouri River Correctional Center. So we work with people who are incarcerated in minimum security prison, but knowing that a lot of the people that Judge sees are likely the people that we work with in the program. And every time I walk in there, I don't think about why they're there. I really look at it as an opportunity. They're people just like me. They've maybe made some different decisions. Obviously, they've had very different circumstances in their life. So I really do check any judgment at the door, and I just really look at them as cool people that I have a chance to meet and get to know, and give them a safe place to share whatever they choose to share with us. And something really great that we've seen, just keeping that in mind, like we get that feedback. My husband and I both volunteer out there, and we've gotten that feedback multiple times, and it never fails to kind of hit me a little bit, is that when somebody tells you that they feel like you don't care what they've done and it doesn't matter, that tells me that I'm doing the right thing, and it feels good to hear that, because I don't ask them why they're there. I don't ask them how long they're there. That's really irrelevant. I'm coming there as a person. I come there to run, but we also play pickleball there. So we have multiple purposes. Like, I'm there to help people run if they want to run. I like chat with them while we're walking the loops, and they tell me whatever story they want to tell, and I share whatever I want to tell, and you can create a lot of like human connections there, and that's really how I see RAD too. It's not about really, for me, it's not even about identifying an us versus them. It's just an us. We're an us. When I'm at RAD, we're an us. We run. We come together to do healthy things and continue healthy habits, and also do that pro-social thing. It's addiction probably sometimes takes root in loneliness, so it's also an opportunity to be social, but just first and foremost for me, more than the running, because I will run whether I'm with people or not. I go there to make those human connections, and I see that's what brings people back. Like when we go to MRCC, oh my gosh, the people that you see that have never run before, that we've gotten to run 5Ks, half marathons, marathon, that had never run before, because people are cheering them on, supporting them, showing up time after time after time. And that's really the key, is just being persistent in your commitment, because somebody depends on you somewhere. They might not want something from you other than just that opportunity to connect. And so that's what I put out into the world, and that's why I do it. It's the human connection and the humanity of it. Addiction has a whole lot of aspects that I don't understand personally, but I can relate to the emotions of shame or regret. I can relate to a lot of the emotions that are probably bundled up in there, just as another human being, right? It's not foreign. Addiction is foreign to me, but humanity, that's me. So I find opportunities to connect that way.
Okay, thank you. And Judge, I'm going to give you just a little bit of time so people can ask questions.
Okay.
Since everyone
I can
has,
take a hint.
what is and I know by your job, you're kind of a problem solver. People give you problems and you have to figure out a solution. What is a practical thing that, given your perspective, you think that a community could do that would help maybe alleviate some of the issues you see?
Well, I do really think it takes a village. I think awareness is a big thing. the biggest way to combat addiction is to never start, right? And that's why I think is the most important lesson for young people, because no matter what your age, you can make a bad decision that can really affect you for the rest of your life. And I don't want to scare anybody with that, but you can. And there's a lot of peer pressure. It's easy to say yes. Sometimes it's hard to say no. You know, you just have to be strong and make good choices. And a lot of that is who you hang out with, making a good choice, your activities, the environment you're in. We see, you know, juvenile court is just heartbreaking because we see so many people come from dysfunctional families, and we really can't solve problems. You know, we can't do the best we can. And Mandy talked about MRCC, and that's a population that's, you know, 70 to 80% of those people when they were incarcerated had addiction issues, and a lot of them have mental health issues, and so that's why I think RAD works there, and they need support. I mean, that's what we do. I think the best thing we can do is support people. Is my time up? I have one story about RAD. You know, RAD. One of the important things we do is we have coffee and treats afterwards, so everybody can talk or socialize. Nobody really knows who anybody is. We don't have people tell their background. If they want to share, they share. But we tell people, you know, a lot of people with addiction don't feel like they're good enough or they don't fit in. And we tell people when they put on their running clothes or when we do the Santa Run, everybody's in Santa Run, you can't tell who's a runner and who's a volunteer and who's in addiction. And so it's a good thing like that. I started RAD in 2014, and back then it was me and Tom Regan from Heartview. Tom's passed away, but he a lot of times it was just two of us, sometimes just me running. But one of the first people that joined RAD was a guy named Jack. And Jack was 42, 43, I think, when he started RAD. He'd been in YCC when he was a kid. He'd been in and out of addiction and treatment, in and out of jail. And finally, he just turned, I think, 42, and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And his probation officer said, well, why don't you try RAD? Because we're starting up RAD. So Jack showed up, and his probation officer said, well, I don't know if he's going to do it. I don't know if he's going to talk to you. He's really introverted. And Jack showed up. He's wearing basketball shoes. And he ran the first couple of times in basketball shoes. And then I said, Jack, you know, if you want to run, I'll get you a pair of running shoes. And that's kind of where we started the idea that, you know, we don't need much to be a walker or a runner, but you do need decent shoes. So we got Jack shoes. And Jack ran a 5K. He thought that was great. He ran another 5K in Mandan for the 4th of July race, knocked a couple minutes off his time, and his family came there, and they were so excited to see him engaged in an activity that was healthy and that he was excited about. And I was in a lot better shape back then. I was younger, and so he goes, Judge, do you think I can start running longer distances? And so he ran a 10K, and then he ran a half marathon, and then he ran a half marathon a little over a year after he was in the program. The Bismarck Marathon, the half marathon, and he said it just felt so good because it was his birthday and it was the 2nd anniversary of his sobriety. And so Jack, he's still running with us. He's gone through COVID and cancer, and he comes back and he still runs. And he was probably 2 or 3 years into the program. I get a email from him because we run all year round, and it's New Year's Eve, and he says, Judge, are we going to run tomorrow? And I said, Jack, we're just going to take the weekend off, let everybody enjoy the holiday. And he said, that's fine, I'll just run on my own. He said, but I have to tell you, I have to thank you, he said, because I think you saved my life. He said, I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for running. He said, I lost so many friends, and he went through all these drugs that he was on, and he just said, running gave me a purpose, and that's why I'm alive today. And so that's why if you can reach one person, you know, it's going to make a difference. And like I said, Jack's still running today. He's an amazing story. So I'm sorry I might have taken too much time.
So do we have any questions for general questions for individual people on the panel? Okay, I'm going to run over. Sure.
Okay. So my name is Brittany, and I'm in recovery. I've been sober for 10 months. I've faithfully been running with RAD since June. I haven't showed up for the past month and a half because my car is broke down. Yes. But when I chose to get sober, I decided that I needed to replace some of them bad habits with good habits, and so I chose RAD. It's an easy way to, for healthy habits, like Mandy had said. I set goals for myself. RAD will sponsor an event for you. My first one was the Bismarck Marathon. And every event that I've ran in, I ran a better time every time. So those are like small goals that you set for yourself and you accomplish them. And it's, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's like, makes you feel good. Anyways, that's why I like to run with RAD. It also, helps the community, because one of the other events that I ran was the Santa Run, and that helps Hope Manor. That's a recovery and addiction right in our community. Let's see, I did the cystic fibrosis, the turkey trot. That's to support a good cause. And then also I did, what was the last one that we did? Oh, I did the Monster Mile, and that was for Heartview, and those are all addiction recovery services in our community. Because one of the things that I think that people didn't say was that there is like a stigma about addiction where it kind of gets shoved aside, but it's real, like it's really happening like right here in our community. And I came here because I thought that I was gonna see like people in AA and NA and fellowship with people. I'm not seeing like a whole lot of people that I recognize out here. This is a different population, so I just wanted to share that with you from someone that's in recovery. That yeah, these things in the community do work. So,
Thank you. Thank you. So where would we've had a couple mentions of RAD now? Where would someone? Is there like a RAD Facebook page, or if someone wanted to participate or wanted to donate money for shoes, or where would they get in touch with RAD?
What's the best way? We have an email address. It's radstrong2014@gmail.com. radstrong2014@gmail.com would be the best way. We do have a Facebook page. You can check that out as well. If you can send a message on that, we can reply. But anybody can come. 8 o'clock Saturdays at the Y. We can just meet in the lobby, or we meet downstairs actually.
Downstairs.
Yeah, and so I haven't been coming much. I hurt my heel at the beginning of summer, and then I've had some other issues, and so. And Mandy and Charlie have just done a wonderful job carrying it on, and but yeah, so radstrong2014@gmail.com, or the Facebook page is a way to go.
And RAD is RADD.
RADD, yes.
Any other questions?
I don't really have a question. I just kind of have a statement or a little bit of something I want to share. We lost our son at the young age of 19, and who said blindsided is exactly what happens. Addiction creeps up on you and everyone around you, actually, and it can take you down so quickly. And I think the young people in this room especially need to hear how quickly it can take you down. Addiction also affects you not just in life, but also in death. And by that I mean when, just personally for me, when I lost him in 2016, it turned my life and my direction and my everything upside down. And I stood in front of his empty door the first or second night after he was gone, and I realized the profound silence that loss makes you aware of. There's no more laughter, there's no more close relationships, there's no more kids ripping up cars in the garage, there's no more boom boxes and wiring and Mom, check out this video. There's no more, there's no more. When you lose somebody to addiction, there's no more. It's gone, and that affects everyone around you. And when I say even in death, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for a first responder to zip somebody up in a black bag. I can't imagine, and I have such great respect for those people that have put themselves in those jobs, and they do that every day. I can't imagine his job, because there's North Dakota nice, and when you're sitting in front of somebody and you have to make a decision on how to treat them, for instance, that might change the rest of their life. I can't imagine the power of that and the responsibility that must sit on your shoulders every day. And I guess I just want to say too that losing him changed me, and I found what I think is what I was put here on this earth to do. And I think I wouldn't have realized that if I wouldn't have gone through the loss and the grief. And now in the short 8 years that he's been gone, I have gone full force into the recovery world. I am passionate about it. I am beyond passionate about it. I'm maybe a little bit close to being crazy about it, if you ask my husband. But anyway, I do not want to see another family lose a kid. It's not the natural course of things. It's what the true meaning of forever young is. And so I now, I bust my butt trying to give people a second chance, or at least give them the time of day. And I think if I was to answer that question I think he posed on you, what is something that you do or feel, I don't remember how you worded your question, but something that you could do for somebody that's suffering from mental health / substance abuse issues in their life, whether you think it's a disorder or a disease or what have you. I think what you could do as a part of our community is to take the time, and whatever it takes from you, to walk up to the person that you see is struggling and to say, hey, I got a couple minutes, you want to sit down and talk? Maybe you could sit down with that person and plant that one seed that helps them in their recovery direction. It helps them find their way out of it. And even if they fail later again, to help pick them up again so that they know they're worth it. They're so worth it. This is something they're fighting. Okay, so I'm on the way over here, I'm thinking, why is addiction and mental health, that whole ball, why is it so different than other diseases? And I experienced just about losing my daughter to cancer when she was 9, turning 10. This was completely different than that. And I think it's because the disease that he was suffering from is a disease of the mind, it's a disease of morals, it's a disease of behaviors, it's a disease of choice making, it's a disease of you lose people because of the shame and stigma. They don't want to talk to you anymore. So the point I'm trying to say is, if you can just take time out and talk to people, make them feel that there's worth in them, then that's one of the best things you can do for somebody that's struggling. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a quick question before Scotcheroo time? Okay.
So, this is a question this time. To anyone up there, like you talked about how like addiction would creep up, and what would the early stages of like said addiction creeping up look like? Yeah.
So I think for me, personally, I thought that I was doing it because it was fun, and I kept doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like it didn't, like the weekends turned into Monday, then Tuesday, then Thursday, then Friday. Then I was spending my last dollar on it, and nobody told me. Addiction, when I started, nobody told me that you withdraw or that you could get addicted to it or that you would need it if you kept using it. I didn't know that, and so I remember the first time that I got sick from not having it. It scared me, and I knew then that I was in trouble, that I messed up. And I think when you realize that your kids are staying out a little bit later, or maybe they're making excuses because they might need money for this or that, or they're isolating in their room, or they're not coming home. Those little things are things to pay attention to, because you'll notice when if they're struggling, things change. They don't maybe not laugh as much. Maybe they don't come around the family as much. Things like that are things maybe to look for also.
We have time for maybe one more. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So if we could all give a nice round of thank you for our panel. And there is coffee and scotcheroos back in the, what's that? And some cookies. Thank you all.